Hello Leo, and welcome to your in-depth monthly forecast for January 2023. I'm going to give you the key features to look out for, but please stay with me. I will then dive deep to give you in forensic detail each of the influences and dates particularly relevant to your sign. Now, as we come into the new year, we have a solar return, and your solar return puts a lot of emphasis on the 6th house, which is where we ensure that life runs smoothly, efficiently, that we feel productive, that we also feel that we can help other people to some degree. But it's been true to say that whilst this has been quite a prevalent energy in your situation in recent years, not least because of the role of Pluto since 2008, over the last couple of years, Uranus has been in your sector of success, sector of worldly interactions. And so you've had an opportunity to try to use your reforming instincts, your ability to manage things skillfully, but in a fresh and new and sometimes innovative way. So you've been pushed perhaps to look at your mode of employment and balancing that against your overall structure and also the needs of other people. But also, of course, Saturn's been in your sector of relating for the last couple of years too, and it is going to have a big impact on this month. But there's also a new moon on the 21st, which forges a conjunction to Pluto. It's a disassociate conjunction because Pluto just nipped in to the end of Capricorn. It will be moving into Aquarius on the 23rd of March, briefly this year. But this suggests that something fated around a relationship could happen in the month following the 21st. This is big stuff. But because Mercury is retrograde as you come into this new year, I think making sure the detail of situations does work in a very calibrated, precise and very ordered way is going to be important. And of course, this flags up Mercury's influence of the sign of Virgo, the 6th house. So this is not a time to ignore little details. As you come into this new month, those details are going to be really important. But I've got lots of exciting things to tell you. There's an amazing link between Jupiter and the Sun and Mars in the Sun later this month, and those can really set you alight. So please stay with me for more. But if you would like to understand what this year will hold for you personally, and ascending above this zodiac broadcast, if you give me 3 pieces of birth data of time, date and place of birth, I can give you your forecast for the year. If you order it at the end of year 2022, you get the rest of that year free. But also my special package of 30% off, you will get your life roadmap, your character analysis, which can help you to understand some repetitive patterns that may have come up in your situation, but it can also help you to seize opportunities with greater conviction. I will also, in my package, give you your 12 zodiac sign written forecast for each of the signs, which gives you something to go back to as we go through this new year. Please see the link below for more. Also, if you're new to my channel, thank you for joining me. Please click and tap on the bell notification symbol if you'd like to become a subscriber. For all ongoing subscribers, thank you so much for your support. So Leo, as you make your way into January 2023, the Sun, Mercury, Venus and Pluto are all in house 6, the sign of Capricorn, which is earthy, very much to do with the established order. And Mercury's in a retrograde, as I mentioned before. So Mercury can be to do with things in the 6th house, like appointments, whether it's to do with medical appointments or anything to do with pets, if you have pets. And managing in a precise way your diary is going to be a key part of not being affected by Mercury's retrograde in the early part of this new year. Now, Mercury is going to go direct on the 18th, something that we'll all collectively be pleased about. But you know, you can use Mercury's retrograde very much to your advantage, because it could ask you to grapple with some details that perhaps you've been reluctant to really grasp. That's because you have an innate appreciation of being bright and positive and creative. You know, you're ruled by the sun. So details sometimes can bore you a little bit. Now, of course, this would depend on your natal chart. So if you have planets in Virgo, this will be much less the case with you. You will have that appreciation of details. If you're someone, for example, with a lot of Sagittarius or ninth house energy, yeah, you'll really understand what I mean, that details can be a bit of a bore. However, as you come into this new year, the more that you can let yourself gain information about foodstuffs, ingredients, additives, but also perhaps supplements, your diet and your physical well-being are something that this solar return really gives you a lot of encouragement to grapple with. But it may mean taking the time to become more informed. So not very sexy stuff. Of course, many of us set a New Year's resolution each year to be a bit more virtuous in some way, but your chart this year really pushes you to do that as much as you can. Also, that conjunction between Venus and Pluto at the turn of the year suggests that sometime, whether it's this month or throughout the year, there's going to be an offer that comes around a job where the person making that offer is someone that you find very impressive. But it's going to be important that you are able to divine what the motive is behind the offer. Because very often when Venus and Pluto are in aspect, there's some kind of leverage going on. Charm, Venus, is used to mask the desire, Pluto. So just be aware of that. It could be that someone's going to offer you something that works perfectly well for you, and you will forge a really great accord. But there can be the potential for shenanigans, less so with the conjunction, to be honest, but much more so with the square and the opposition. But just be mindful of it. But in week 1, Jupiter is actually going to move into your opposite sign, which is absolutely glorious to have right at the start of the year on the 3rd, moving into house 7, the sign of Aquarius, where you've had grumpy old Saturn for the last couple of years. Well, that's really manna from heaven. But also Venus forges a beautiful sextile to Jupiter. Jupiter in your sister fire sign of Aries, right at the start of this year, and it will be there through till the 16th of May. So expansion, travel, risk-taking are really encouraged by this Jupiter position. But the link with Venus is significant because they're both the planets of fortune. Venus the lesser benefit, Jupiter the greater. So some kind of relationship, connection could bless the very start of this year in a way which absolutely delights you. Now on the 6th we do have a full moon. The full moon is interesting because the moon is in the sign of Cancer, which is governed by the moon. But for you, this is probably one of the trickiest full moons of the whole year because it's in house 12 for you, which is very much to do with the psychological domain. If you think of the moon card in tarot, yes, it can be very much to do with nurture and the home and more feminine principles, but it can also be linked very much to confusion or being so overloaded with sensitivities that we can't actually see the more practical reality in a situation. But this full moon is interesting because it also opposes Mercury in that retrograde. So important in the following 2 weeks to try to stay aware that your perspective could be quite emotional, but potentially subjective. That's not saying it will be that way because you may be someone who is very imbalanced individually, but I'm just saying collectively for Leo folk, important to know that. But Uranus is actually threaded into this full moon. So Uranus is in the part of your horoscope, remember, to do with work or your role in life. Uranus is very much to do with truth, but it can be erratic, provocative and difficult. So I think if you work in an organisation where you're not particularly happy, engaged, you don't feel very valued, you feel that you work incredibly hard, but there seems to be more stick than carrot. It may not even be a financial matter with you. It may be more of a principle of not feeling appreciated. So if you are someone who works in a giving profession, or you work in an organisation where you're very conscientious, but it seems to you that other people take it for granted, this energy could come into the open in the following 2 weeks. But because it's a sextile to the moon and a trine to Uranus, trine to the sun and Mercury, both very positive links, I think if you need to articulate something you've been holding close to your chest, you can do it in a very constructive way. Now, of course, Mars has been in the sign of Gemini since late August last year, and that's given you a lot of encouragement around your social connections. But from the end of October, it has been in retrograde. But from the start of October to the end of the first week of December, it was squaring up Neptune in your sector of devotions. And I think there may have been some disappointments around certain friendships, but Mars going direct on the 12th is going to help to bring you a bit more confidence and more energy and more thrust. And as I mentioned before, Mars also forges an amazing link to the Sun later this month, but I'll tell you more about that shortly. Now, remember I said to you that within the full moon, Uranus forged a positive link with the Sun and Mercury. Well, that goes on from the 3rd to the 9th. There could be a job offer that comes up during that time, just when you're feeling quite vulnerable, to be honest, from the full moon, that actually could be really good for you. Try to not let any doubts or anxieties or timidity get in the way of being bold, because this job could be just perfect for you and actually give you the recognition that you really richly deserve. On the 18th, Mercury ends its retrograde, so if there have been little snaggles about, the 6th house rules the domestic sphere, or at least, cleaning it. So if you've had a domestic appliance pack up or go wrong in the first 2 weeks of this year, as much as you could cuss the cost, actually Mercury going direct may give you some different ways of thinking about it. For example, could you find a local person who will mend it, replace it with an inexpensive part? Could you get something off a listing site much more inexpensively, but it may be second hand? So your resources will need to be stewarded in a very astute and finite way in the first part of this month, should something go a little awry in terms of something you ordinarily depend upon as being very reliable. Now, on the 20th, the Sun makes its way and joins with Venus and Saturn into the sign of Aquarius. So the interesting thing with this transition is that on the 21st, the new moon in Aquarius is very close to Pluto, as I mentioned before. So this is a new epoch. We really haven't had this happen for over about 250 years. So incredibly important, but this new moon also links with Jupiter. When Jupiter and Pluto are in a very good association, in this case a sextile, that can really be very, very positive. So Jupiter for you is in the part of your horoscope to do with daring, independence, adventure, freedom, travel, contracts, international affairs. But the sign of Aries is very much about thrust, fire, like you. Pluto, just in Capricorn, very close to the Sun and the Moon, is asking you to find ways that you can connect to others and form relationships or alliances. And Venus moving at the start of this month into your 7th house, forging a link, positive link with Jupiter at that stage, suggests that maybe, as much as that full moon may have teased into the open people that you really can't rely upon, whether it's colleagues or friends, you are or have the opportunity to forge alliances which can be really positive going forwards Is there a catch? Yes, because by this stage of the month, Venus has advanced forwards and is sat next to Saturn. So any weak relationship could also be taken out of your situation as well. Venus conjunct Saturn is not a bunch of fun. I was actually reading the other day that Bob Dylan, David Bowie, and who was the other person it was? There were 3 performers and they all had the moon conjunct Saturn. And I think it was Miles Davis. And so the moon obviously is a very tender area, very much to do with femininity, not necessarily females. Of course, Saturn is the sign that rules, the father, the orthodox. So not a particularly cheerful mix, the moon and Saturn in a conjunction. It's not easy in any aspect, to be honest. But this particular event sees Venus with Saturn. So one of the things with Saturn is that it can help things to endure. So if you did make a bond with someone at this stage who you really liked and felt there was that simpatico on both sides, the relationship could actually last a lifetime. And in fact, when Saturn goes across the 7th house cusp, which Venus obviously governs because it's rulership of the ascendant or the sun of Libra, those relationships can actually be when people bind together in a marriage or move in, forge a proper formal commitment. But equally, it can be completely the opposite and where something breaks apart. So that depends on your unique circumstances. Ironically, the modern ruler of Aquarius is in the news on the 22nd. So we have Saturn, the traditional ruler, on the 21st. On the 22nd, Uranus goes direct, where it's been in retrograde since the end of August, really towards the time of when the sun was in your sign. And that going direct is something else to savour. But on the 27th, Venus makes its way into your sector of longer term money, but also deep devotions, and it's exalted in the sign of Pisces. So it also forges another brilliant link, a semi-sextile to Jupiter, just at the end of this month. But also, as I mentioned before, the Sun in Aquarius forges an amazing link to Mars in your sector of future plans, friendships and networks. So despite some of the challenges that could be there with Saturn and Venus, I think the Sun and Mars is very dynamic, very thrusty. A new alliance could be really exciting, but also the Sun forges an amazing link with Jupiter, a sextile, one of the luckiest of all planetary aspects. Right at the end of the month, it's threaded into that new moon, of course, but it's also in week 4 in entirety. So that's really interesting stuff. I should just say also that Saturn in Aquarius is in a semi-sextile with Neptune all through this month, where we can be very constructive about situations, but also embrace the more sensitive domain that comes through Neptune, so form and function, structure and imagination. That could work well for you as well. So to summarise, Leo, a month when you're going to need to take care of some practicalities early on to make sure that if you do set yourself some New Year's resolutions, you try to take them seriously. And I shall try to take mine seriously as well, I promise you this. But also, as the month goes on, it really becomes a huge welter of opportunity to forge better alliances with others. Now, that could mean putting a relationship that wasn't working very well on a better footing. It could mean meeting the love of your life. It could mean clearing out some people who are not so good for you on the basis of that full moon, but celebrating the people who are the solid citizens in your life. Or it could mean some new work relationships or alliances, particularly with Uranus going direct. So really excited for you. Thank you so much for joining me and wishing you all the best for 2023.